Hello again and welcome to 10 Things About Writing. Having talked about the first person and the third person, I'm now going to talk about the second person, which in my book I was slightly disparaging about, but there's more to be said than just in that chapter. Now, some of you will remember these books, which are written entirely in the second person, and to some extent they've given the second person a bit of a bad rap. If you haven't come across these DIY adventure books, they're all written in the present tense and the second person, and there's a reason for this, but it's not necessarily for everybody. For instance, the blacksmith takes your money and walks over to some bales of hay in the corner. He lifts one up, and underneath it you see the chainmail coat. He turns to you and says, "You have to hide everything in this place, you can't trust anybody." The coat fits perfectly, and its workmanship is excellent. And so on and so forth. Now, the second person here is used specifically to bring the reader directly into the adventure. You are being addressed directly. You are a character in the book. This is great. It's wonderful if you're writing DIY adventure books. It's less easy to sustain if you're writing something which is in a different area, a different genre, because it does that thing you're never supposed to do. And I'm going to talk about that a little, because I'm not sure I agree that you're never supposed to do it, but the second person definitely breaks the fourth wall. Now, the fourth wall is the invisible veil between reader and writer, the one that reminds us that, in fact, we are reading a story. Now, sometimes I think that's perfectly okay to break it. In the DIY adventure books, you have to break it because you're basically going, hey, here's the veil, come through it, stand here, engage in this story, take the blank shape of this character that's waiting for you to inhabit it. This is your role in it. Now, most books are not written like that, but if you have a look at books that are written in the first person, you'll find that quite a lot of them segue into the second person once in a while. P.G. Woodhouse, who I talk about a great deal and who I respect enormously, does it quite often, but just in passing. He'll say things like, I suppose you'll know all about old Bertie. And he'll do a little aside to you like this, as if you're a friend of his that he's telling a story to. And all of a sudden you will realise that this is a story which is being told to somebody, possibly even to you. It's a way of bringing you closer to the story itself, to the text. It's a way of giving you a role to play. I find that I use the second person an awful lot. In the Gospel of Loki, I use it a lot, and some people like this and some people don't, but quite often Loki says things like, "Oh, I'm not going to bother telling you about this because you know all about it." Or he'll say things like, "So shoot me, I'm no hero, I killed him." All these things are little sly asides to the camera in your narrative. And as long as you don't overdo them, and as long as you do them for a reason, I think they're fine. It is a way of making a connection to your reader. And it particularly works for comic effect. It also particularly works when you are talking about an unreliable narrator who from time to time likes to pull you in and build a web of deceit around you before then revealing that they were lying later. It has to be handled carefully because it has to be done cleverly. Otherwise, done clumsily, it can destroy the whole illusion that you're trying to create. But there are times when you can use the second person without breaking the fourth wall at all. For instance, when you have a story within a story which is a confession to another character. So, effectively, it's a first-person narrative written as a very long piece of dialogue to somebody else within the story. I use this all the time. Lots of people use this all the time. It's a respected way of telling a tale. You can always have that as part of your story, using the second person that way, just from time to time reminding your audience that you are not necessarily speaking to them, you are speaking to another character within your narrative. It's a way of making the first person more interesting. It's a way of extending it. Now, if you do decide to talk directly to your reader, and it used to happen all the time, from Jane Eyre, "Reader, I married him" is absolutely addressing the reader directly. And for a while it was a very fashionable way to do things. Now it's less fashionable because we tend to feel that it takes you out of the story. Stepping out of the story is sometimes difficult to sustain because you don't want your reader to be outside the story for too long. You have to pull them back in. You have to make an effort to rebuild that wall of engagement. So it's something to be used for special effect. For humorous purposes sometimes, it works very well for that. Or sometimes to remind you that your character, though he appears to be addressing you, the reader, directly, is in fact addressing somebody else. The whole of Anne Frank's diary is written this way. The whole of Lionel Shriver's We Need to Talk About Kevin is written this way. All novels which are written in diary format or letter format are written this way. So there's no reason to be afraid of the second person, but I would say be very careful how you use it. Be careful when you use it. And if you do choose to break that fourth wall, although there's nothing wrong with doing it from time to time, make sure you can get your readers back. I'll be talking about something else next time. Until then, happy reading and goodbye.